I suppose to start with my own perspective, since one of the strongest messages from today for me was the importance of perspective, and really today was about hearing about the service user's perspective. I think it's the first time I've been at a whole day event that was devoted, entirely to that perspective, which I think in itself is very telling, and hopefully it'll be the first of many. So my perspective, as Elizabeth said, is I'm a psychologist by education, not practice. I've never worked. I don't work clinically. I've always done research, and I've always been interested in and have always done applied research, mostly in the mental health area. We talked about applied research earlier. I've always been interested in research that is going to lead to something. It has to be about bringing about change in some way, and I suppose what we call that, I'm mostly involved in mental health services research, so research about services, and through that perspective. So I suppose in that way I've worked in this kind of interesting space, if you like, between mental health professionals and service users for almost 20 years now, which has been really useful, and I think, I hope I've gained have had a sense of the different perspectives of both, but I've certainly learned a lot about the service user's perspective in the last number of years. I suppose it's interesting that the two questions came up at the end, and let me just go back to the because, I've actually structured what I want to say around these two questions. I started at the beginning of the day. I think it was Alison who mentioned it first. It's kind of, why is service user led research important? And my distillation of what people have been saying today comes down to these kind of four main areas. I suppose firstly there is the value of your perspective, and that's your perspective as service users and experts by experience. I'm going to flip through bits of paper because I was making things going on. Yes, I have two things to say on that. I suppose the first is it's important to really keep that unique perspective. And this is a kind of a balancing act, because I'm going to talk a bit about kind of capacity building and that, but while it's very important to get additional skills, to learn about the different ways of doing research, the interviewing, Paddy and Jim were talking about, and to understand the kind of complexities in the language of research. It's also important not to kind of be sucked into the system in a sense, and to maintain your own unique perspective, because that is the real value that you bring to the whole kind of mental health research industry, if you like. And the other point, I suppose, on perspective is involvement on whose terms. I think Jan had a slide on this, and it is that sense of negotiating the space whereby your perspective is maintained, but how is that brought into the process? I suppose one concrete example of that is something the Mental Health Commission have done a lot of work with the Mental Health Commission. And over the years, the Commission has funded research. They started off as research scholarships, then they became research fellows. Elizabeth and Liz actually are both on the external research committee of the Commission. And the criteria that we had for those research grants have changed over the years. We thought a simple, it's your chances will be increased if you involve service users in your grant, would be enough for all applicants to say, oh, we better involve service users in this, but no. So we've progressively made that a more stringent criteria until the last call for funding, which is actually quite a big kind of funding grant, which an explicit criteria is that service users must be involved in whole research process. And I think that's one concrete example of how at an organisational level, and how lots of different organisations can support and encourage and mandate, if you like, service user involvement. But it was interesting, Jan was talking about in trying to monitor that and measure that it can often, even with the best intentions and plans, it can often still be a kind of a token exercise. Oh yeah, we asked a service user A, B and C, so we can tick that box. And speaking to Margaret, I can't remember her second name, who's the CEO of the Irish Advocacy Network. Margaret O'Connor. And it's funny how you hear these things anecdotally, but when the request for funding went out by the call for proposals from the Commission, there was a big flurry of activity, and I know any well-known service user researchers, Paddy is nodding furiously, were all of a sudden asked to be involved in a whole range of research proposals.
We're all in the committee.
Yeah, and often really at very last minute, as in like 2 days before the closing date for the submission of proposals and applications. It was, we're supposed to involve researchers as well. Will you be involved? Not, let's meet. We've got this interesting proposal. What's your perspective? How would you like to be involved? No, can we just let us tick this box? So it is difficult to create the structures to do that, but a start has been made, I think. The second, really, one of the most important reasons why service users should be involved in every way in conducting mental health research is that, in my humble opinion, it results in better research. And that is the bottom line, really, in terms of what we're all doing, is to produce valid, reliable research. And I had it's funny, when I was preparing for this, I thought, should I write something or should I just listen to what everybody's saying and then write something at the end? So I kind of did a bit of both. What's interesting is my pre-prepared thoughts were very much in line with this. Why is service user research important and how do we conduct better research? So just to dip into this, I should have brought my specs. I'm getting old. Yes. I suppose to me, the exclusion of service users in research gives you research findings that are just less valuable, and that's the bottom line when we're doing research. How do we obtain answers to our questions that most closely reflect what is really happening? That's the research paradigm. Answers that have high validity and reliability. In jargonistic terms, what our pure researchers would like to hear, how can we achieve the maximum control over our research such that our confidence intervals are narrow and our statistical significance is below 0.05. And many researchers would answer this question by saying, well, you have to do randomised control trials, and that was the top of the tree, and all the speakers touched on this in terms of research evidence. It's randomised control trials or nothing. But this type of really highly controlled trial usually isn't possible in the messy, real world that we're all interested in working in what's called applied research. It also is the type of research that tends to specifically exclude service user involvement. But most importantly, it tends to produce findings that don't reflect everyday situations.